Welcome to another program of Interludes. And I have once again been lucky enough to get John Cargher to come back into the studio and tell us more about his incredible, fascinating and interesting life. John, of course, is a well-known ABC broadcaster and a man who's been totally involved in the theatre for almost his entire life, but for certainly a very long time. John, welcome back to Golden Days Radio.
Thank you for having me, as the actress said to the bishop. I said, thank you for having me, as the bishop said to the actress.
Well, we're delighted to have you back. Now, we need to continue. The last time we were here talking, I was collapsed in laughing because you apparently are still a member of the RAF because you've never had your DMOB papers.
Yes, well, I mean, we finished at the end of the war, and with the Labour government, the things they did then, which was basically a communist government, and they just refused to let me go. They wanted me to stay in a factory, and I didn't want to. I wanted to go back to the theatre. Yep. So my boss throughout the war told me that if I wanted to take an unpaid holiday, he'd be very happy. He didn't want to go on paying me, so I didn't want to work anymore. So I left, and of course, that was immediately after the war, 45, 46. There wasn't any theatre to speak of. Things were very, very difficult. And I finished up getting a job managing an art gallery in Bond Street, which was old masters, not modern art. Yeah. And I acquired a certain amount of knowledge about old masters and things like that, nothing very much. I have no claim to be an expert. But because of that, my next stage of my life turned out to be something quite extraordinary. Lots of things in my life are extraordinary. You found that out by now.
Yes.
I decided with the Attlee government in England and no work and no theatre that I wanted to get out and decided to go to America. Now, that was pretty impossible in those days. Apart from the Americans not letting the Europeans in, there was a question that the government wouldn't allow you to take out any money. You were allowed, I think it was £3.10 a day if you wanted to go overseas on a holiday. So now what happened was that I had a lot of customers in the art gallery, which were Americans and South Americans, and they liked the kind of pictures I sold, which was cheap pictures, which were authentic period, not necessarily famous artists, you see. And I made a trip to America just to investigate the market. I went to all the cities, doesn't matter which ones. And anyway, what I did is I arranged a tour of an art exhibition, which was to start in Los Angeles, in a Bullock store called Bullock's, which is more or less the equivalent of Myers. And then it would go on to Seattle and then to Chicago and Dallas and finish up in New York. And anybody who bought a picture got the picture at the end of the tour.
All right. Yeah.
So I arranged all that. Then I went back to England and arranged all the pictures to have frames manufactured, that kind of thing. Then I managed to get my wife, my daughter, and then I got permission to go overseas for the art gallery tour, which was supposed to last 2 months. And I was allowed to take £3.10 for every day of those 2 months, but no more. This is very important, this, because it changed my whole life, the fact that I couldn't take any more money out. You'll hear in a moment. Musically, you'll hear it. What happened was when I put the pictures on a boat to go via the Panama Canal to go to Los Angeles. I then took my wife to Los Angeles and prepared the exhibition at Bullock's. Had a whole floor. They gave me a whole floor in Bullock's. An exhibition which was supposed to open in the 1st of December 1947 to just catch a Christmas trade so people would buy for Christmas. So I arrived in Los Angeles and settled in, and the boat ran aground in the Panama Canal, didn't arrive.
Oh, good grief.
And I was stranded in Los Angeles with nothing to do. I wasn't supposed to take a job, and I ran out of money. Of course. Because it's the 2 months, £3. I was not allowed to take any more money out of England. Not that I had very much in the first place. However, I was forced to take a job. And would you believe, without any... Well, I had some experience in dealing in second-hand records. I might have mentioned that last time, but I knew something about records. Yeah. I got a job managing a record shop in Los Angeles. It was extraordinary. Right in the very center, if you could imagine, absolutely in the dead center of the business district in Melbourne. The address was 23.5 West 55th Street. In America, apparently, they don't say A or B, they say
a half.
425.5. And it was the manager of the shop had run away with the takings. The place was in a total mess. And I went and I reorganized it all while I was waiting for the pictures to arrive.
Yeah.
Of course, there was no way we could open on the 1st of December.
No.
Because the pictures weren't there,
Yep.
you see. They arrived about a fortnight later, around about the 14th of December, which was not exactly very good for the Christmas trade.
Not a lot.
I got some publicity in the paper and so on, but at the same time, I was working in the shop. Now, the shops in Los Angeles at that time worked from 9 in the morning till 11 at night. Mm-hmm. So we worked in 2 shifts, 9 to 3 and 4 till 11. Lunch in between for work that out, you see. So anyway, I worked the shop full-time from 9 till 11 at night to put it in order. I did get it in order, and we did very good business. And I'll come at this point right at the very beginning. Of course, although the shop was in the center of town, had a lot of classical music, which was a total mess, all these huge, big, thick albums they used to have. And I did put it all in order beautifully. But I also had to serve the hit parade. And what the American public liked, you see. And one day somebody came up to me and said, "Have you got the Whiff and Poof song?" I'd never heard in my life. And he said, "What the hell is the Whiff and Poof song?" It sounded very strange. I thought it was a current hit or something.
Probably was.
I think you probably know by now that it's a Yale University Glee Club song or something like that. At any rate, the point is that I became acquainted with American pop music through managing a record shop in Los Angeles, of all places, which came in later in Australia, came in very handy. But however, let us hear the Whiff and Poof song, as it was completely new to me. I'd never heard of it before.
One of my favorites.
We're poor little lambs who have lost our way. Ba, ba, ba. We're little black sheep who have gone astray. Ba, ba. Gentlemen songsters off on a spree, doomed from here to eternity. Lord, have mercy on such as we.
Poor little sheep. That was me. Me. And God had mercy on me. The pictures arrived. And then, of course, I had the trouble. I was still managing the record shop.
Oh, goodness
and I was also in charge of the exhibition with the press and everything like this.
Suddenly from no job you have two.
And I worked from 9 in the morning till 3 afternoon in the shop, had a quick bite to eat, went to Bullock's and spent the rest of the day there. Then I had to drive miles across Coango Pass. I was living up in North Hollywood in the San Fernando Valley. Anyway, the point is at that time, by the way, you might be interested to know, the big hit at the time was I'm Looking Over a Four-Leaf Clover. That was a big hit at that time.
Yep.
And there's something called I Don't Want Her, You Can Have Her, She's Too Fat For Me.
That's right. Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very popular at the time.
At any rate, the point is this, that Christmas came. We didn't sell many pictures. We sold some. Mm-hmm. We were supposed to go to Seattle next. And the first week in January, I got a letter from a friend in England saying, blah, blah, this passing the day. And at the end of the letter was, I'm sorry to hear your father died. In England, in London. Now, I had a stepmother. He'd got together with her during the war in return for looking after his mother. He thought she'd changed. She hadn't changed. She was still the same old bitch, if you forgive the expression. And she didn't notify me that my father had died. My father was a diamond merchant, and he tried to recruit me into the diamond business. I knew the combination of his safe and everything like this, and I was going to inherit some money, I thought, and everything like this. And there was I stuck in Los Angeles with a tour across America. So anyway, to cut long story short, I cancelled the tour, shot it in Los Angeles, put all the pictures into storage, rushed back to England. When I got back to England, there was nothing left. My stepmother got it all. I never got a brass farthing, except that I got all the people who claimed my father, they'd given my father things on Apro diamonds. It came to me, asking me to give it back to them, because I had no connection with it at all.
Oh dear.
So anyway, there I was back in England with nothing to do, and the exhibition in America, I mean, I couldn't very well go back to America, restart it again, you see. I was still managing the art gallery, and fortunately, they were very understanding about it all. We sold the pictures by auction or something in America, and I went back to work in the art gallery. But in the meantime, of course, I wanted to. I didn't want to go on in this damned art gallery, especially after the fiasco with the tour. And at this point, I ran into John Regan, who was the man who was a choreographer for the ballet company I started before the war. Now, he had started a theatrical agency for dancers. He offered to sell me a half share in the theatrical agency for £150. It wasn't much of an agency. He was pretty hopeless as a businessman. I was a businessman. He was an artist. I paid him his £150 and became a 50% partner. The first thing I did was I added singers to the dancers we managed, and we did quite a lot of business, getting commission from the artists. We found jobs for this kind of thing, you see. And then we expanded. We did other things. For example, you may remember, if you heard the last program, that I used to be in television before the war with the ballet company. Yep. And the man who was in charge of television before the war, Stanley Bate, they put him in charge of new television when BBC television started again.
Oh, right, yeah.
And he thought, in those days, they thought that movement was important. For television. Today you're looking at a face talking. It's ridiculous. Yes. They wanted opera, ballet, dancing, variety, and I was managing dancers and singers, and actors. So I got a fair amount of business with BBC television, and we restarted this little ballet company again and took it on tour in the country. Yep. 3 Arts Ballet. Not much of a company, but it had some very good dancers, some of which got very far afterwards. So anyway, among the other things I did for BBC television was they used to do operas, completely live. Oh, good Everything was live. Oh, good There was no recording in those days. I mean, the first one there was Pagliacci. The chorus master was Charles McCarris.
Oh, good heavens.
Who did the auditioning. Then they did an opera called Il Tabarro by Puccini, which nobody knows. It's part of the so-called Trittico. Opera lovers will know what I'm talking about. But in this opera, Tabarro, there's a bit of music I remembered. And many, many years ago, I used it again. I think I'll just try this. I'm in England, in BBC television in 1948 or 49, something like that, putting on an opera called Il Tabarro by Puccini, and this is the music that was in it.
Right. Renata Tebaldi and Mario Del Monaco.
That's right, Mario Del Monaco.
Il Tabarro.
From Il Tabarro, and nowadays it's known in Australia for something quite different.
Oh, right.
You might like to mention it, I don't. It's called Singers of Renown.
It's your signature tune.
That's my signature tune, that's right. That's where it comes from.
Oh, right.
That's
well,
where I first heard it.
Very long association with it then, haven't
Oh,
you?
yes.
You obviously like it.
Well, it's very suitable for a signature tune. There's not more to it. It doesn't go on.
Oh,
That's
right.
only 40 seconds of it. That's all there is.
Oh, right. Perfect for the job.
Let me just very quickly mention something else. A very, very lovely little story about television, BBC television. Oh, first of all, I didn't produce Pagliacci. The BBC produced Pagliacci. I provided the singers and helped with the designers and all that kind of thing. But I decided, they used to engage my little ballet company, Three Arts Ballet, to do a ballet, which we provided, and we decided what it was. So I put a proposal that we had a ballet about Joan of Arc, which was based on the history, the real Joan of Arc, not about Saint Joan, you see. And I talked the BBC into putting it on. And then one day I got a phone call from Cecil McGivern, who was the head of BBC Television, and she said, "Look, we've got trouble. The religion department's objecting. We mustn't put on a program about Joan of Arc, the person, because Joan of Arc is a saint. We can't use it. We can't have it." And I said, "Well, I've got a contract for my ballet dancers and for the company to do a ballet for BBC Television, and I demand that you put it on." Of course, he couldn't. Whatever. It went on for a long time. This wasn't a thing you put on the next day. It took some time assembling and everything like this, you see. So anyway, in the end of it, I was determined to get my ballet company back on television. We had been several times, and where it was afterwards, you'll find out in a minute. And I went to him, and I said, "I'll put a proposition to you. This has never happened before. I think I was the first person ever to do it." I said to him, "Look, I will provide you with a complete ballet of half an hour, everything except the orchestra. Costumes, designs, dancers, everything. A half an hour for £100. That's bloody cheap, you know. And it won't be about Joan of Arc. It'll be about barrow boys. It was called Paradise Row. I don't know whether you would know about barrow. Barrow boys used to stand in the streets of London selling fruit.
Yes.
And it was a Cockney ballet.
Yeah.
And we had it in our repertoire, touring the provinces. And we didn't have to rehearse it, except for the cameras, you know. Anyway, we put on Paradise Row, and it was so popular, they repeated it twice, live.
Really?
Well, that's how popular it was. However, I had other things to do. I was still running a theatrical agency. I was doing television programs. And at the same time, John Regan and I started the Watergate Reviews. Now, this might sound strange to you. Nobody had heard of Nixon.
No.
Watergate is a part of London next to Waterloo Station.
Yes.
And there was a tiny little theatre. It was a 100-seater club theatre, which meant being in a club, you had to be a member to get in.
Yeah.
You were not governed by the Lord Chamberlain. We could say things in the review which you couldn't see in a commercial theatre. And we'd put this show on at 10:30 at night and catered for the actors, the professionals who finished their shows by then and wanted to go somewhere after. They could have a drink at the bar, they could have a snack, and they could see a show. And the show was concerned, it was like Mavis Bramston in Australia.
Right. Yes.
They were sending up theatrical people.
Right.
We were making fun of the people who were in the audience.
They would love that.
We had Noel Coward sitting in the front row. He fell off his seat. He was laughing so much because we were sending him up. What we used to do, first of all, all I can say is the Watergate Review is famous in England. It's famous in the theatre, although today it no longer exists, of course. Actually, the theatre was pulled down when they widened the Strand.
Oh, right.
We had 2 singers, 2 dancers, 2 actors, 2 managers, John Regan and myself. We had a stage manager, we had a pianist, that's all. Tiny little stage. Would you believe we had fluorescent stage lighting? It was an experiment of Strand Electrics. It never got any, but they were experimenting with trying to use fluorescent lighting. So we had all this. And the show was an enormous success, and we used to replace the numbers in it each week according to the latest news. I had two writers. As I mentioned, two writers,
No.
John,
Two writers.
Peter Myers, and occasionally I used to contribute to it. Occasionally I contributed a number to it under the name of John Stevens. I never used my own name. At one point, the BBC Radio engaged 3 writers to write a show called Starlight Roof. There was Peter Myers, whatever the other man's name, and John Stevens. The stars of the show were people called Men About Town, a comedy thing, and we had to write comedy numbers for them. And they only knew the 2 writers that were famous because of the Watergate reviews. They never heard of John Stevens. They didn't want John Stevens on the program, so I had to drop out. I didn't care. I got my commission from the other 2. Anyway, the thing is that the Watergate review was immensely successful. First of all, I've got to say, it was a showcase for the artists in it. They were all out-of-word actors and singers and dancers who used it as an audition forum. Managements used to come and see the show and try and engage actors from it, you see. And they were first-class singers and first-class dancers. And the main attraction of the show, we used to take 2 shows in town, a musical and a drama, or an old cows, or something like that, and mix the 2 up. I mean, the dancers did Brigadoon and Oklahoma as one number. The girl was dressed for Oklahoma and the man was dressed for Brigadoon in a kilt, you see.
Yeah, right.
Everything was funny. And it went snap, snap. Can I recite one of the numbers from the Watergate Review?
Not?
This was a whole number. A pretty girl came on the stage, a dancer, in a tutu with a nice star on her head and a wand in her hand with a star on the end. It was Christmas time. And she said, she said, every little girl, I mean, I'm not going to try and pretend to be a soprano. She said, every little girl would like to be the fairy on the Christmas tree. But how would you like a smile on your face and a tree in the most embarrassing place? Blackout. 15 seconds for a number. And the whole show went like that. Bang, bang, bang.
Oh, wonderful. Yes.
And we sent up everything under the sun.
We're going to have to. Those reviews, they're fantastic things because they're very sort of off the top of everybody's head. Everybody has to be really on the ball, and everything comes very quickly and has to be written and changed. I think it sounds wonderful. John, we're going to have to sort of slow up now because we're running out of time.
Okay.
Will you come back and do a bit more, please?
I'll do another one if you like. Yes, certainly.
That would be terrific. Look, wonderful. We look forward to seeing you again very soon. And you've been listening to Interludes with Chris Mackenzie.